A backyard in Chicago is hiding a body, a detective is closing in, and the man who put it there is about to run out of road. 3 episodes remain in this season of The Chi, and episode 8 might be the one where everything Bari's been avoiding finally catches up to him. Let's start with what we actually know, because the synopsis for this episode is short, but it's loaded. Episode 8 is called Cold-Hearted, and the official description tells us Tiff throws herself into hosting Kesha's bachelorette party, while Emmett's bachelor party gets turned upside down, and Bari makes a decision. That last part is the one that should worry you. When a show tells you a character is about to make a decision, that's rarely a small thing. That's usually the moment a storyline either resolves or explodes. To understand why this matters, you have to remember where Bari actually stands right now. This is a man who helped bury a problem that wasn't really his to bury. He got pulled into Tiffany's mess, agreed to make Nuck disappear, and told himself he could walk away clean once it was done. That was never realistic. Once you help someone hide a body, you don't get to just go back to your regular life. You're tied to that secret for as long as it stays buried, and the person you did it for now has permanent leverage over you. Tiffany knows exactly what Bari did. She was there. And that means every time she needs him to do something else, all she has to do is remind him what's buried in that yard. That's the trap Bari built for himself, and it's the trap this episode seems ready to spring shut. Detective Tucson is back in the picture, and based on what we're seeing heading into this episode, she's actively looking for Nuck. That puts her one conversation away from Bari, and Bari is not exactly built for pressure from law enforcement. He's spent this season trying to present himself as someone who's changed, someone who wants out of the streets, someone chasing a quieter life. But the moment a detective starts asking pointed questions about a missing person, all that surface-level transformation gets tested. Talking to police when you're hiding something is one of the hardest positions a person can be in because silence looks suspicious and talking risks a slip. Bari has to walk that line perfectly, and he hasn't shown us this season that he's capable of walking lines perfectly. There's also a psychological angle worth digging into here. Bari isn't just afraid of getting caught. He's exhausted. Multiple times this season, he's talked about wanting freedom, wanting to leave this life behind, wanting to stop running. That kind of language usually shows up right before a character either breaks free or gets pulled under completely. It's the classic setup you see in crime dramas. The person who wants out is almost never allowed to leave quietly. Something always pulls them back in one more time, and that one more time is usually the one that costs them the most. And that's exactly the tension Bari is sitting in with Tiffany. She's made it clear, directly and indirectly, that she sees herself as someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to protect her position. She's already told Bari, in no uncertain terms, that she'd get rid of him if she had to. Think about how cold that actually is. This isn't a rival threatening him. This is someone he's been working with, someone who needed his help, essentially telling him that his usefulness has an expiration date. That's not a partnership. That's a countdown. So, when the trailer shows Bari telling his sister Brittany that he wants his freedom, and her response is basically a warning that freedom means nothing if Tiffany kills him first, that's not just a throwaway line. That's the entire thesis of where his storyline is heading. Brittany is voicing the fear that the audience should already have. Bari isn't dealing with an employer he can just quit on. He's dealing with someone who has already shown a willingness to make problems disappear, literally, and he is currently one of the loose ends closest to her. What makes this even more uncomfortable is thinking about who Bari used to be. Earlier versions of this character were not people who got pushed around. He had a reputation, a presence, a certain level of respect in these streets that came from not being someone you could threaten easily. The Bari we're watching now looks smaller. He looks like a man who's constantly calculating his next move instead of controlling the room. That shift isn't just a personality change for the sake of drama. It's the show quietly asking a question. What happens to a person once fear starts making their decisions for them instead of instinct? Because right now, fear is exactly what's driving Bari, and fear tends to make people easier to control, not harder. That's the situation heading into Cold-Hearted. A detective closing in. A woman who's already proven she'll cross the line to protect herself. A sister begging him to leave before it's too late. And a man caught in the middle who keeps saying he wants out, while his actions keep pulling him deeper in. The title of this episode alone tells you something. Cold-hearted isn't just describing Tiffany. It might be describing exactly what's about to happen to Bari. Now let's shift to the other storyline this episode is built around, because while Bari is dealing with a countdown clock, Emmett is walking straight into a party that's supposed to celebrate his future and instead might end up exposing his past. The synopsis tells us Emmett's bachelor party gets turned upside down, and if you've been paying attention to how this season has been building, that phrase should immediately grab your attention. Bachelor parties in television are almost never just bachelor parties. They're pressure cookers. Take a group of men, add alcohol, remove the usual social filters, and suddenly the secrets people have been sitting on all season start leaking out. And Emmett is sitting on a big one. He knows what Tiffany did.
He knows Nuck is gone.
He's been carrying that knowledge quietly, watching Tiffany plan a wedding and host a bachelorette party for the same woman she's been lying to, and that has clearly been wearing on him. Earlier in the season, we heard him wrestle out loud with the idea of how he would even begin to explain any of this to Kesha if it ever came out. That's not a small worry. That's a man who understands he's holding information that could destroy his sister's engagement and possibly put people he cares about in serious legal danger if it ever reaches the wrong ears. What makes this particularly tense is the timing. This bachelor party is happening in the same episode where Tiffany is hosting Kesha's bachelorette party, smiling, pouring drinks, playing the role of the supportive best friend, while knowing exactly what she's hidden from her. There's something almost unbearable about watching a character build warmth and celebration on top of a lie that big. Kesha, for her part, has said she feels lucky to have someone in her life she can fully trust. She has no idea that the person she's talking about is the same person responsible for burying a body a few miles away. That kind of dramatic irony is one of the oldest tools in storytelling, and it works because the audience is forced to sit with information the character doesn't have, which creates a specific kind of discomfort that keeps you watching just to see the moment it breaks. And it does feel like it's building toward a breaking point. Emmett saying "no more secrets" in this episode isn't just a passing comment about his own relationship history. Given everything we know about what he's aware of, that line reads as a signal. It suggests he may be at his limit, that he's done protecting people who have created their own mess, and that this bachelor party could be the moment he decides silence isn't worth it anymore. If that happens, the fallout wouldn't just hit Tiffany. It would ripple through Kesha, through the wedding, through Bari, and through whatever fragile trust has been holding this group of people together all season. There's also something worth pointing out about how these two storylines are actually connected, even though they look separate on the surface. Tiffany is at the center of both. She's the one throwing Kesha's bachelorette party, while also being the reason Emmett might blow up his own brother-in-law's bachelor party with the truth. She's the one holding leverage over Bari while also holding a secret that could destroy her relationship with Kesha entirely. Every storyline this episode seems to run through her, which tells you the writers are setting her up as the character whose choices will define how this season ends.
She's not just managing one lie.
She's managing several, all at once, and the more people involved in a secret, the harder it becomes to keep everyone quiet. It's also worth noting how isolating this must feel for Tiffany, even if she doesn't show it. She's surrounded by people all episode, hosting a party, playing hostess, being the center of attention, and yet she's more alone than anyone else in the room because she's the only one who knows the full truth of what she's done. That kind of isolation tends to make people more dangerous, not less, because desperation and secrecy have a way of pushing people toward decisions they wouldn't normally make. If she senses the walls closing in, from Bari's instability, from Detective Tucson's investigation, from Emmett's growing frustration, she may not wait around to see how it plays out. She may act first. So, heading into the back half of this episode, you've got a bachelorette party built on a lie, a bachelor party that could unravel that lie, a detective circling the truth from the outside, and a woman at the center of it all who has already shown she's capable of making people disappear when they become inconvenient. That's not a coincidence of scheduling. That's a season finale setup happening 3 episodes early, and it's exactly the kind of collision that makes Cold-Hearted feel like a turning point rather than just another episode. Which brings us to the piece of this episode that might hurt the most to watch, and that's the conversation between Bari and his sister Brittany. Out of everything happening in Cold-Hearted, This feels like the moment that's less about plot and more about who Bari actually is underneath all the choices he's made this season. When he tells her he wants his freedom, that's not a throwaway line. That's a man admitting, maybe for the first time out loud, how trapped he actually feels. And Brittany's response cuts right to the heart of it. She's not asking him to stay out of guilt or convenience. She's asking him to understand that freedom doesn't mean anything if he's not alive to enjoy it. That's the kind of warning that only someone who truly loves you gives, because it means she's willing to say the hard thing instead of the comforting thing. And that's what makes Bari's situation so frustrating to watch. He's not a naive character. He knows exactly who Tiffany is and exactly what she's capable of. He's watched her make decisions most people would never be able to live with, and he still keeps finding reasons to stay close to the danger instead of walking away from it. Part of that might be guilt. Part of it might be a genuine belief that he can control the situation if he just plays it carefully enough. But there's also something deeper here, something a lot of people can actually relate to even outside the world of the show. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't recognizing that you're in a bad situation. It's actually leaving it, especially when leaving means admitting how far you let things go in the first place. That's really what this episode seems to be building toward. Not just a plot twist, but a reckoning. Bari has spent this entire season being pulled in two directions: the man who wants to change and the man who keeps making choices that prove he hasn't changed enough yet. Tucson's investigation is forcing his hand from the outside. Tiffany's threats are forcing his hand from the inside. And now his own sister is standing in front of him, basically asking him to choose which version of himself he actually wants to be before the choice gets made for him. That's a heavy place for a character to be, and it's an even heavier place for an audience to sit with, because by this point in the season, it's hard not to want better for him, even knowing how badly he's handled getting here. What happens next is genuinely hard to predict, and that's part of what makes this such a compelling stretch of episodes. There are really only a few ways this goes. Bari could actually listen to his sister, cut his losses, and try to get out before Tiffany decides he's more of a liability than an asset. He could get caught in Detective Tucson's investigation before he even gets the chance to leave. Or Tiffany could decide that the risk of keeping him around outweighs whatever loyalty she owes him, and take matters into her own hands the way she's already shown she's willing to do. Every one of those outcomes is sitting right there in front of him, and with only a few episodes left in the season, the show doesn't have much runway left to keep this thread hanging. What stands out most, thinking about all of this together, is how human the fear actually feels underneath the crime drama surface. Take away the secrets and the danger for a second, and what you're really watching is someone who got in too deep, who knows it, and who's terrified of what it costs to finally admit that out loud to the people who love him. That's not just a storyline about a body in a backyard. That's a storyline about how hard it is to walk away from your own worst decisions once other people's lives get tangled up in them too. So as this season heads toward its final stretch, Cold-Hearted feels less like a title describing one character and more like a warning for what's coming for almost everyone involved. Tiffany's choices, Bari's fear, Emmett's breaking point, Detective Tucson closing in, all of it is converging at once, and something is going to give. The only real question left is who ends up paying for it, and whether Bari gets the chance his sister is begging him to take before it's too late. If you think Bari finally listens to Brittany this time, or if you think he's already too deep to walk away, drop your prediction in the comments, because I want to know where you think this is heading before the episode drops. If this breakdown helped you make sense of everything building up to Cold-Hearted, do me a favor and hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and join the family so you don't miss the next update. I'll see you in the next one.